Hey everyone, welcome to the Americana Station podcast. Today on the podcast we have DL Rossi. He just released his record this past weekend. I was able to go check out his performance at the Basement, the OG, with Sweetheart Pub, back to business at the Basement. Alliteration at its finest. It was a great show. It was super awesome to see live music and full bands again. Of course, we were masked up. There were little pods of 4 people, so you had to buy your tickets in 4s. And I took some pictures. You can see it online. I'll be posting some of those photos. And I think Dan Barry's were there. I took some photos of them. You'll see some on their page. Elijah Ocean, who will be next up on the podcast, was there and took some photos of him. Phoebe Hunt. I did miss King Corduroy, unfortunately. I had to get going, but I saw some videos of his show and it looked awesome. He had horns and everything. Super cool. But yeah, so we're talking today about Lonesome Kind, which is DL Rossi's new record. We got to hear it in I don't know if we played all the songs, but we got to hear most of it live at the Basement this past Saturday. You might have missed out because it was a sold-out show. But you might have been there. Hey, who knows? It was also sold out. So it was at full capacity, which was super cool. It was so nice to see people, even though we were all socially distanced into little pods. And just felt good to be around music again, take some photos, and we got some exciting video content. I am doing video content. I'm doing it all now. I'm just all around media mogul here at Americana Station. So I'll be, I haven't really been doing anything on YouTube or anything like that, but I'm going to start getting into that. So make sure, I think it's, you know what, I'll tell you next time, but I'm pretty sure it's like youtube.com/Americana Station. I honestly haven't been on it in a very long time, but we're going to be updating it. And you'll start to see some videos there, which is super cool. It's always great to have more content. What else is going on? I know the Danberries are playing at D's this weekend. So that's cool. Check them out if you missed them at the Back to Business at the Basement. And, I just got a couple more people booked solid for the podcast. Let's see. We've got Volk. They're going to be coming in. Let's see. That'll be next month. And also Adim, the artist, who just put out a new record. And it's super good. I hadn't heard any Adim stuff. We've been following each other on the socials. And I got to, it was Zach Russell who shared the post. And so I went and listened because I'm like, man, I've been following this guy. I need to check out his new stuff. And it is really good. So it has already released, but we're still going to be talking about his new record, Adim, Adeem, the artist. So be sure to check out his new record. And we got DL Rossi on the show today. I'm super excited about it. His new record is killer. I can't say enough good things about it. It's a great moody record, and it's really gonna it's one that you can keep diving into and learning a lot more about. And I'm super pumped to have such a talented guy on the podcast. We always have talented people on the podcast, and that's always exciting. That's why I do it. But today is DL Rossi, so here we go. All right, everyone. Today on the podcast, we have DL. Is it Rossi?
Rossi.
Yep.
Sure.
You have a new record coming out, and you got some great reviews from Glide, Wide Open Country, Pop Matters. People have been really impressed with the new record. How long did it take you to record the record? Is this something that was pre-pandemic, or did you kind of record it, write it and record it in pandemic?
Yeah, so it was interesting. We had planned to go at the beginning of the year. There were plans to go out to LA to record the record with one of the co-producers, Tyler Chester. My brother is my other producer, and he lives in Nashville. And we were planning a trip out there to go record the record. And then when everything started shutting down, we kind of didn't know if we were going to be able to do the record. And then probably around April, my brother figured out a way for us to basically be able to do it remotely, where I just had to be at his studio. And we recorded in May, where it was just basically me and my brother in the control room. And then Ross Reynolds, who played drums, every day we'd leave the front door of the studio open, and he would just walk into the drum studio. And Tyler was working remotely from LA over Zoom, and they were just sharing the session on Pro Tools as co-producers. And so whenever we recorded something, it would like instantly upload it to Tyler's session, and likewise it would work the same way for him. So it was an interesting thing because we were all separated, and so we were all talking to each other over like iPads and computers on a Zoom call. But it was a fun experience. It took us about 2 weeks to do like the bed tracks of the record. And then there was probably another week and a half for some overdubs and like background vocals. Laura Jean Anderson is out of LA, and she did some BGVs, and then Felicity Jones did some BGVs. And then Nashville guy, Juan Salazarno, did some extra lead guitar parts at the end of the record as well. So it was all in all, it was about basically like, it took a month to get everything like kind of tracked, mixed and mastered. So, yeah.
So it was basically recorded from Nashville to LA to Michigan.
I actually was in Nashville for the recording of the record. I'm in Michigan now, but
okay.
I was there for the tracking. So yeah, it was basically Michigan, Nashville and LA was basically what it was recorded between.
So, and you were in East Nashville, but you've since left to go to Michigan.
Yeah. I moved to Grand Rapids in June of last year. So I've been here since around then. I'd been back and forth a lot. 2 years ago, it would have been now. Yeah, I lost an uncle to brain cancer. And so I was starting to do more road trips to Michigan to visit him because he was in the hospital. And as I was making the trips, I just kind of like remembered what I missed about Michigan and came back. So
yeah, Michigan's great. I'm so sorry for the loss of your uncle. That's
yeah. Tough. It was a tough time. It was did a lot of the writing for the record. Like some of the songs started back then. But yeah, it was it's always tough to lose somebody that you love.
So backing up a little bit, and also noticing that your Jesus tattoo over there, I did see on your, yeah, that's a sweet tattoo.
Thanks, man.
I did see that you kind of got your start in the Christian music scene, doing some.
Yeah, I was in a rock band with my brothers when I was 15, kind of like a Switchfoot, Jimmy Eat World kind of thing, and I was the drummer. And kind of worked my way into songwriting as that band progressed, and then spent probably a decade up until probably 32. I was in like ministry, you could say.
Yeah.
But when I started kind of releasing my single, like my first record was very influenced by like David Bazan. If you're familiar with Pedro the Lion.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I was basically the first record really talking just honestly, because it was right after I'd been diagnosed with cancer and gone through surgery. And I was kind of doing a bucket list. And I was like, I want to start writing these more personal songs and being a little more like straightforward with what I had struggled with in terms of like anxiety and depression, all the things that kind of I had gone through growing up and working in the church. And the response wasn't too great from local, like the local church. And so I ended up basically being asked to leave the position that I had, and kind of moving slowly past a lot of kind of like the evangelical stuff. I was always kind of a little bit probably too progressive, but also didn't know how to talk about it.
I understand.
And then that experience kind of led me to, move away from that. I would still consider myself a spiritual person, but definitely not active in evangelical Christianity anymore. So,
we my last guest, Kyle Crownover, we were talking about that a little bit. He was also a worship leader. I was never a worship leader. I did play, bass, because that's where you can really get your feet wet.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
The last few people that have been on it were all somewhat involved in some sort of music ministry before they really took off. And, when you're in a small town, not that Grand Rapids is small, but, when you're in a smaller town, it's really your only option is to, play some.
Yeah. Back then, actually, I was on the east side. I was in a suburb called Sterling Heights, which is in Metro Detroit, and worked in like the Troy, Rochester area. And yeah, I mean, there's really, really great stuff about being on like a music team and learning so much about music and being able to, be, taught a lot, for a lot of kids. I think it's basically like, if you don't grow up playing in clubs and bars, growing up in your local church was like a place where, tons of people learned, I think especially like, people that come from like the gospel background, like, all of them started in churches, when I've been on the road and talked with different drummers. So yeah, I mean, I think that's like, especially just in America in general, because of our background in Christianity, like the basis of so much in our country is around that. So there's tons of people, I think, that share that experience, of being involved in the church. And for me, it's, even though I mentioned Bazan, that was kind of like a journey for me where it was just more of like a thing of realizing, hey, that's not my scene. That's just like, there's just more that I want to pursue and go after. And, it's not really, I don't really spend as much time anymore thinking about my time there, or like kind of like that transition out. It's kind of more just like a fun part, or like a part of my past that I've just kind of like accepted and, moved on from, so.
Yeah, there is definitely like a control, like toxic mechanism to a lot of that, and not get in it, but
no,
it's just like, like you said, you mentioned, you started writing more real, authentic songs, and they tried to shut you down, which really feels like you don't value me as a person. You just value what I contribute. And if it's only in this, like, 200 word vocabulary that you just keep recycling. And
I mean, I think it's a really challenging, it's a challenging environment to participate in, because of kind of what you're saying is that, you're expected, based on like the theology, to sacrifice self for the greater whole. Right. And, and there's a beauty to that. Obviously there's a beauty to an idea of being a part of a community, and, serving a community is, I think, certainly a wonderful thing. But I think there's an absence of, in a lot of situations that I was a part of, I can say there was an absence of, fully developing the self so that an individual can be a participant within the community. You kind of skip past the stage of like forming a person to be able to have confidence in themselves, and equipping them to believe that, hey, like all of the things that you're going to face in your life, you're equipped to be able to handle, and like building that sense of self in somebody and teaching them about like just kind of the human experience of understanding basic things for me, like depression, anxiety, and what those things are and how they function in your life.
Right.
Certainly, sexuality is something that is not, in my opinion, very well thought out in a progressive sense of what we know now. It's certainly not inclusive in most situations.
Yeah.
At best, it's kind of a passive acceptance. And so there are things about that where I think I have people close to me who are still living in those experience in that world, and it's a rich world for them, and they get a lot out of it. And I think it's beautiful. And I think they're also, trying to be a part of changing that, which I think is like a wonderful thing as well. For me, years and years of counseling, and just identifying a lot of abuse that I went through, ultimately like exiting that world was the best thing for me, because I kind of had to start coming to grips with how it triggered me, and how it had really created some dangerous ideas about self and, those kind of things. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there are people that have really good experiences growing up in that are maybe in more progressive places. But overall, yeah, in my experience, it's pretty challenging for a lot of people to,
and you kind of mentioned, you went to counseling or therapy, but in a lot of I didn't grow up in Michigan, but at least in Southern evangelical areas, there's a sort of, well, if you're in tune with the Bible and the Holy Spirit, then you're healed, and they don't want to. There's like a taboo kind of thing about like therapy or.
Yeah.
So, kind of waltzing into that sort of era of your life, which, once you kind of left that period, a couple of years later, you went through a nervous breakdown.
Yeah. So for me, there was a big, so after I released that record, I think there was like two things that happened to me. One, there was like this huge freedom that I experienced of finally kind of like being on my own. But I also, for the first time in my life, was on my own.
Yeah.
Right. And kind of having to process and deal with things. And leading up to that, within the church, I had actually gone through like some weird experiences with how to handle my depression and my anxiety. Right. And all of them kind of involved supernatural ideas of like getting, being freed from it, or, being prayed over, and all those things. And that had really created this deep, deep thought in me of my depression and my anxiety are not going away. And that's like, one of the worst things is when you have anxiety about your anxiety, and you have guilt and shame based around your depression, you can really just start to spiral down. And also kind of mixed with, for me, in my experience in life, it's interesting when you're going through something big like cancer, or for me, like when I've gone through cancer, when I've gone through my divorce, I default to a kind of get through it mode. And I'm actually, a lot of times trying to help the people around me deal with what's going on with me. And then I find a few months later, something small will happen in my life that will then kind of trigger me dealing with the emotions, like a breakup or a fight or a loss or something like that will actually be the moment where I start processing the real stuff.
Right. Which also can kind of be like, you have to be strong, like that sort of, which goes back to that, church mentality again, is like, be strong for others.
Or even like, just believe, just believe that it's going to be okay. God's going to take care of it, which, there's something to faith that I admire. But for me, the process of that nervous breakdown led me to finally see a good counselor that was recommended by a couple friends. And it was the beginning of me starting to be able to kind of work through stuff. And, obviously it was like 5 or 6 years of counseling, that, led that succeeded that. And it was probably like some of the biggest stuff for me was just learning, my counselor was just like, so do you know what depression and anxiety actually are? Like little things like that, and really starting to understand, like anxiety is a function of like the monkey brain, and it's your fight or flight instinct. And it's really your body protecting you. It's your body thinking that there's something going on right now that is subconsciously reminding it of something in the past that's happened to it. And it's alerting you. Right. Or, your depression a lot of times can be a function of your subconscious letting you know that something internally is off, with your life. And it was the first time somebody had really framed my depression and my anxiety as part of me, and having use, and not just being a problem to get rid of. And then that kind of allowed me to start having a relationship with that, in a way of, like, well, your feelings and all those things are important. They're not always telling you the truth. And sometimes they are telling you the truth. And you kind of just have to learn to have that relationship with it, and love it sometimes and ignore it at other times. And, just like all those things that everybody kind of learns and is going through. But, the breakdown was tough. It was, I thought I was never gonna like sleep through the night again. I was sleeping about 3 hours a night. I was having nightmares. I was having panic attacks. And when you get down into that place, you just start kind of like fantasizing about, not feeling that way. You just want to not feel the hurt and the pain that you feel. And, luckily I had a lot of loving people around me, and, I got connected with a counselor who really was able to help me, start on track to like healing, and the early records and stuff like that are very, there's a lot. I mean, there's always a heaviness, I feel like, to my writing, especially with the mood. But obviously the earlier stuff you can pick up on a lot of that.
Do you feel like the therapy has helped with songwriting, or has it kind of stifled it? Or
oh no, I mean, I was lucky. I have a lot of friends who have had like tough situations with counselors, and there's nothing that's foolproof, right? Like everything some people have bad experiences in all different realms.
Right.
But for me, I think the counseling has definitely helped me with my internal conversation about myself. You have bad times, you have bad years, I've had runs, where I was like, when I first moved to Nashville, I was drinking too much and all that stuff. But I mean, for me, definitely the process of going through counseling gives you, I feel like, the tools to be able to start being able to grow and start this conversation, for me anyways, of like loving yourself. Kind of swinging back to what we were talking about growing up in the church. For me, the default was always like people pleasing and like serving,
right?
And ignoring self. So it's songwriting has always kind of been my way of processing my life and figuring out what I really think, because I kind of just start stream of consciousness and let myself start singing about something, and then you kind of realize as the words are coming out, it's like, oh, this is what I'm processing right now. And so songwriting and therapy have helped, because in a way, even before I was aware of it, songwriting was my counseling. It was the thing that was keeping me together. And then when I actually got to go into a session and talk to somebody about stuff and learn how to have a conversation with myself and how to love who I am and like forgive myself and do all those things. And it's definitely helped me, I think, just like be a better person and a better writer, for sure.
DL Rossi's new album is reviewed on our friends AmericanaHighway.org's website, so make sure you check out the review there. His website is dlrossi.com, Rossi. So make sure you go there, and he's also available on all streaming platforms and also has vinyl available, so make sure you check that out. And while you're checking things out, make sure you go rate and review Americana Station Podcast. That helps us a lot in growing and getting more people out there. Share it with your friend and tell a lot of people about it. Make sure you check out DL on the new Americana Highways Backroads playlist on Spotify. I will be updating that today. And also share that with your friends. All right, we're going to get back to the interview. Yeah. I mean, it definitely, I agree with the therapy mentality. Recently I've been going through some tough stuff with, I just had a daughter and kind of not with the mother. So it's, a little bit of a struggle to be able to see her. And you can't communicate with a newborn. So, writing to her really has helped a lot with processing the situation.
That's gotta be tough. Yeah.
So I definitely understand that.
Yeah. I mean, I think those situations, there is nothing kind of like more difficult than either not like just basically not being able to communicate with the person who's either hurt you or maybe somebody who you've hurt, and not being able to, have that conversation or have that space or have that time with them. And so the work of doing that internally with yourself is a lot of times like, it's so difficult just to do it internally for a time. And that's gotta be tough.
It's also like, it's kind of like once you do that, it's like, it's not necessarily off your chest, but it's like, it always feels a little freeing to be, like to have it out in the universe, like not just keep it in your head constantly. And
I mean, you keep going. Yeah.
I was going to say, like having someone connect with that and understand that exact same thing that has been in your head that you haven't been able to, really release. It feels that always feels awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and there is a skill and a thing that I haven't experienced like a lot, but learning to come to peace with something internally, without an external source saying like, I hear you, I'm sorry, or, those kind of things.
Yeah.
It does unlock a little something in terms of you realizing how much you really do have within you, in terms of being able to like deal with life. Right. Like so much of what we're, taught as kids, which is a great thing, is just like, just tell somebody that they hurt you and then they'll say that, they're sorry. But one of the great tragedies of getting older is you realize not everybody will see something that way. You won't always be able to have that conversation with somebody, but learning to be able to have that internal dialogue, of being able to move on from a hurt, or realize you don't need somebody to, you're not beholden to someone else. You know what I mean? You can,
right.
There is a way through past hurt is actually, there's a strength that kind of comes from it after you've mourned a lot of the hurt and the unfairness involved in it. But, there is a strength to that experience that you find within yourself.
And so on top of cancer and, you mentioned divorce, you also were at Opry Mills during active shooting situation.
Oh man. Yeah. That was, I don't know if you remember that. That was like years and years ago, but I was guitar teching on the road at the time. And I would have days off and I would just basically, when I had a day off, or like a few days off and I was home, I would like Uber over to, I'd find a show I wanted to go in the evening. And then in like around afternoon, I'd Uber over to Opry Mills, catch a show, like a movie. And a lot of times I'd go to the Starbucks over there and just get like a cold brew and then like walking it over to the movie.
Was that the one at the Chili's?
It was actually at, I think, the Forever 21, I think is what it was. It ended up being. And it was it was like a dispute between a couple and a group of guys. It ended up being. But it was a weird situation because I actually walked by that store to get to the food court. And I was in line And there was like, all of a sudden there was like these 6 or 7 kids just came sprinting through the food court and out the exit or towards the exit. And I was like, oh, these kids, like I was like typical, I felt like an old guy. I was like, oh, these stupid kids running through, because they were like really fast running through. And then I saw a dad with a double stroller popping a wheelie running, and his wife next to him, and they were sprinting. And then like probably 25 people came running, and they just screamed, run. And then literally everybody in the food court started running towards the exit and saying, somebody was yelling like there was a shooting. And I was like, what? And I remember running to the door, and it was a weird experience for me because it's weird because it's almost like a living organism. Like all of a sudden there's this huge group of people and they're all running towards an exit, and you're just kind of like instinctually following, and your adrenaline hits. But I do remember there was a moment where I was running, and then I kind of stopped running and I started jogging, because I thought to myself, I was like, if this is an active, like planned shooting, we're running towards an exit, which means we could be running towards another shooter if it's organized. And so that was a weird panicky moment where I was like, okay, I guess this is what I've committed to. And then I kind of ran out the door, and a bunch of people stopped as soon as I got out the door, but I actually ran to the back of the like the parking lot, like near the entrances on the expressway, because I was like, if somebody has a gun, I don't want to be near I don't know what's going on. And ended up they shut down all the exits, so you couldn't Uber out. So I ended up walking up the expressway a mile to the nearest exit so that I could get picked up. And while I was walking up the expressway, I called my family, and I was calling like my brother and different people. And it was a weird experience because nobody knew where I was. They were all doing their own thing. And I had actually just moved in at the time with my roommate, Ruben Bedez, who's an artist in Nashville, who's a great singer, songwriter. Yeah. And I like called my family. I was like, just so you guys know, there was like a shooting or something at the Opry Mills, and I'm okay, but I was there, and I'm like walking up the expressway trying to get an Uber to head back to Ruben's. And it was just this weird experience where I was like calling people up and having all these emotions while I'm walking up the expressway. And that night I was sitting around the fire with Ruben and just talking about it kind of the way that I am now. And I think Kirby Brown was there too. He was hanging out with us. And he was just like, well, there's a song there. And that ended up being one of those songs on This Road was the song that kind of came out of that experience off my last record, A Sweet Thing. So yeah, that was so weird. It was a weird experience. I had like panic nightmares that would pop up every once in a while for like a few months after that. But yeah.
Yeah, I had some friends that were at the Moss Tacos, and when this guy just...
Oh, gosh.
You know about that one?
I heard it was like, was it the one where somebody was in line or something?
Yeah, and they just shot him in the chest and then took off.
That was such a weird time because there were so many shootings that were happening.
Yeah, there was one
in Nashville Cobra, at that time.
I think.
Yeah, there was the Waffle House one or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that was the one I think that got the most national attention. But yeah, I mean, there was so much happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was so much happening at that time. It was so weird, the vibe. Like,
yeah, because this isn't really a shooting town. There's not like,
and not leading up to that. It had definitely not been something where you were hearing about these things. But
yeah, it's not Detroit or New Orleans or
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It was weird.
So the new record is Lonesome Road. First, I want
Lonesome Kind.
I'm sorry,
actually,
Lonesome Kind.
Lonesome Kind. Yeah.
And that's funny. There's a typo on your.
Yeah, there is. I didn't know if you got an updated one or not. On the original one, there was a typo there.
I didn't. So sorry, Lonesome Kind. And shout out, you're going to be playing at the Basement. Is this one of the first Basement shows back?
As far as I know, yeah.
Premiere.
Yeah, my publicist is hosting a show on April 17th, and get to play with like King Corduroy and a bunch of the Danberries and a bunch of great artists.
Yeah,
And
half of them have been on the podcast. They're all like great artists. It's super cool.
Yeah, and it's socially distanced. It's basically like tables. Like you buy like a table.
Right. And it's outside.
Yep. And it's outside, and got a really good band. I got a lot of the guys, or a couple of the guys that actually played on the record, and some friends. And it'll be the first show. Yeah. That I think it's the first show I've played in almost a year. And I mean, cause I hadn't played any shows leading up to the pandemic for a little bit. So, I mean, it's like almost 2 years for me.
Oh man.
So,
are you nervous?
Yeah. So, no, I mean, honestly, the vibe that I feel like is, it's just going to basically be good vibes, because I think everybody's just going to be happy to be together. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, I guess the normal nerves of playing, but not like an exorbitant amount. It's just kind of more like, man, I'm just excited to be able to share some good times with everybody and share these songs. So yeah, that'll be fun.
I'm definitely coming to check it out. I'm super excited. Awesome. Are you getting the vinyl records?
Yes. I'll have vinyls.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I'll have some vinyls at the show. So pick one up. We'll love to give you one. So
for everyone out there in podcast land, if you're in Nashville on April 17th, masks are required, socially distanced outside. It's called Back to Business by Sweetheart Pub. So if you look up Sweetheart Pub on Facebook, you'll be able to find the information. But 2 p.m. is Elijah Ocean, who will be on the next podcast after this one. We've got the Danberries at 3 p.m., who have also been on the podcast. DL is at 4 for his album release. Phoebe Hunt and Dominic Leslie at 5, and King Corduroy at 6. So it's going to be a killer lineup. If you've been waiting to see any of the bands that have been on the podcast, this is the opportunity, because almost all of them have been, and I'm dying to see all these guys live. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
And what's the ticket price on that?
I think it's $15 a ticket, but it's buying a block of 4 together. So get a group of friends together just to sit at the table and
yep, that's right.
Go for it.
It's worth every penny for sure.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And I'm sure the staff at the basement is just stoked to get back to it. So it's a great opportunity to love on them and make sure we all come ready to tip.
Right. For sure. Yep. Man, I haven't been to the basement in probably at least a year and a half, almost as long as you've played a show.
So many. And the basement was literally, basement was my go-to spot every week. It was okay, what show this week do I want to go just chill and see somebody play, and it's just it's going to be great to be back there.
Yeah. There's rarely ever a bad band that plays there. So it's always a great spot to be at.
One time I got somebody hooked me at a Gang of Youths played there a few years ago, and it was a secret show, and I got in and it was completely packed, and they put on just one of the best shows I've ever seen live. And it was so great to be in that room packed out. John Latham was there, and I stood next to him while we were going. It was just it was a fun show.
So do you have plans to come back to Nashville, or are you done with us for good?
I love Nashville. What I realized when I was visiting Michigan was I miss seasons. I miss the snow, and I'm a Michigan guy at heart. But my brother lives there, and I'll always spend a lot of time there. And who knows? I feel like I'm on this little pattern of moving around and traveling, wandering around. So you never know. The humidity, the heat always got to me in the summertime. The 85 degrees and full humidity at 10 p.m.
I'm from Louisiana, so
yeah. So you're whatever.
I'm what humidity?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, for me, it was just always I'm a sweater, so it was just I'm a big guy, so it's just that was always a struggle for me. But I mean, I love Nashville. I think really moving back to Michigan was more of a function of just listening to my inner voice and just being oh, let's do something new. Let's do something different. My time in Nashville was really one where I wanted to put myself in an environment where I was literally surrounded by the best musicians and the best songwriters in the country and the world. and wanting to see what would happen to my writing and happen to me as a musician, putting myself in that environment. It was really like an experiment of wanting to grow, and it did that. There's so many great musicians that I'm a huge fan of now, like Carl Anderson, Kirby Brown, Ruben Badez, Molly Parton, Aaron Ray, like, you know what I mean? Like every month you had an opportunity to go see these amazing local artists.
Right.
And amazing local musicians. You start to just kind of realize all the different people, and it is a wonderful, wonderful town. And I really will always love it. But yeah, right now it's just kind of moving around, trying different things. So
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely at this point in time, at this moment, there's not much to do in Nashville.
Yes.
So might as well go.
Yes.
Where you have 4 seasons that you love.
True. And I got to have winter, you know what I mean? This past, there was snow on Christmas. It was pretty, there might have actually been snow on the ground at Christmas in Nashville too, but it was, we had a heavy winter. It was kind of fun. I could walk around Grand Rapids at night while the snow was falling, and there was just something magical about that for me.
We did get, we got like 3 days.
Nice. Yeah. We got 3 months of snow here. So
yeah, that's too much for me. That's too much.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So, is there a common theme to Lonesome Kind? Or is it is this time with my songwriting, what I tried to really do, I was actually having a conversation about this with a friend last night from LA. We were up late talking. For this album, what I really wanted to do in terms of my writing was I wanted to grow, and I've been encouraged to grow from a few people about saying, like, focus on the stories and don't necessarily focus as much on every detail being about the reality of the story, but really grow into telling the best story you can. Yeah.
And so I tried to, on this record, allow myself to kind of do the normal process of writing these kind of like raw songs that are inspired by real experiences, but then go back and edit and create essentially just like short stories, right? That are just telling the core idea of what it is that I wanted to, get across. And I think overarchingly in the album, the idea is this idea of becoming, coming to peace with just like who I am as a person, allowing myself, David Ramirez, I saw him one time in Nashville, and he said this great thing is just like, you're allowed to change your mind.
Yeah.
And like, that's a human thing to like grow and change your mind and feel different things. And so on the record, there's a lot of different emotions and a lot of different feelings and a lot of different things that I allowed myself to say. And none of them are necessarily true.
Yeah.
But they're true in the sense that these are things that I felt or thought or gone through. And so the real like kind of core of the album is just this idea of becoming okay with yourself, whoever you are, but for me, obviously these stories are kind of telling like aspects of me, but it's really just about that internal growth of kind of coming to peace with yourself, including like the parts of you that are like, sassy or, the shitty parts. And learning that you're like, okay on your own, kind of circling back to what we were talking about in counseling. It's like, you have all the other people are great, and it's great being in community. It's great being in relationships. It's great having things to share with, but you do have all the tools you need, to find happiness and peace and all those things within yourself.
Right. Yeah. Well, and another thing about storytelling is that like, if everything were accurate, it would be a lot more boring of a story,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's a true thing. I got one of those masterclass subscriptions, and I've gotten into the Aaron Sorkin one, and there's a part where he says, he's like, dialogue can't be written as like we talk about it it's got to be two characters talking about something, because that's way more interesting than just two people like having a normal conversation.
Yeah.
And I mean, and obviously that's his style and his opinion, but the spirit of that is true. It's like, you got to get into your story, and you got to get into the characters involved in that story, and cultivate a conversation that's centered around the topic, you know, and the struggle.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, and that's definitely something that I try to push myself to do better, or grow in, I guess would be a way of putting it on this record.
My parents were both journalists, and
oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And so of course they're going to be like verifying accuracy and stuff like that, and, you know, editing. So sometimes they'll listen to my songs, and like, I had this one song where I talk about going home, which is in central Louisiana. And I said something about like, on the way home, there's cotton fields and sugarcane. And my dad's like, sugarcane doesn't grow in North Louisiana. I'm like, Dad, that's not the point. Like, you're trying to paint a picture of Louisiana, not necessarily just Monroe. And then, there's another line where I said, I miss the nights where my mom used to sing, "You Are My Sunshine to Me." She'd rock back and forth in the chair her daddy made as I slowly drifted to sleep. And my mom was like, you know, my dad didn't make that chair. But the whole song's about my grandfather. And so it like tied into the very end of the song. And
yep.
Yeah. And she's like, he didn't make that chair. We bought it. And I'm like, Mom, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
It doesn't work if I don't put that in there, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and it's, you're telling stories, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily truths. It's, you know, right. There is truth wrapped up in it. And, you know, the best storytellers find a way to make, you know, details and embellishments flow together in such a way where you feel what the thing is that you want someone to feel, you know, which is that emotion that kind of makes them feel understood, however you deliver it. But yeah.
Exactly. But then, you know, I think it's just the journalist integrity in them. They're like, this is,
you know, but I also think that like, if anybody's listening to music in that way, like with a critical ear, that certainly you can learn a lot about a song, but a song is best taken in by just like feeling it as a whole, which means not necessarily paying complete attention to the words, not necessarily playing complete attention to the music. That's songwriting, you know. It's getting lost in it and then letting it speak to you. So, but yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. Like the getting lost in the minutia of things and like the smallest detail, you know,
it can kill a song.
Like, yeah, for sure. You got to like let your brain go. That's a big thing for me with songwriting. You just got to like let the creativity happen and shut off your editor hat until there's a song to actually critique, right? Like you can't critique it as you go. You definitely have to allow yourself to do those things and then go back and obviously make something that feels good to you and that you're okay with any mistakes or any like, you know, fabrications, if you'd say, so to say. But yeah, man.
There's also a freedom in knowing it doesn't have to be the best song, you know, or that you'll actually, but just writing because that's what you love doing. That took me a long time to get to because I thought every song was so precious. Getting to a point where it was like, no, well, this can be just an exercise, or this can just be like or just something for me. It doesn't have to be something that's going to be on the next record, and that is super freeing to be in that place.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's always the throwaway mind dump songs that you write on your way to whatever the next EP or single or album's going to be. And I was actually, I told a few friends recently, I was like, there's never really a waste of time, because if all a song you don't use is just the thing that gets an idea or a topic out of your mind so that you can move on to the next thing, or maybe continue to work on that idea in the next song. Right. You know, it's all kind of a part of who you are as a songwriter. And so I think it's important to approach songwriting, or maybe I should say, what I've found is that as you continue to be a songwriter and you accept yourself as a songwriter, you can not feel that kind of pressure you're talking about, because like, this is what I'm doing. So when I sit down to write a song, there's not pressure. It's just allowing that song to kind of be what it's going to be, because there's more music coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're free to just do what you are supposed to be doing,
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful place to end. Thank you so much for coming by. I really appreciate it. I'm super excited to see you and the full band live on April 17th and get the new record. So yeah, and we'll see you again soon. Hopefully get some video at the show.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, thanks so much for tuning in to Americana Station today. Make sure you rate and review, give it a follow, share with your friends, tell everybody about DL. Next up on the podcast, we have Elijah Ocean. He has a new side project as well as an announcement to make, an exclusive on Americana Station, I might add. So make sure you are following, and you'll get the update whenever the Elijah Ocean episode comes out. Until then, make sure you go check out the Americana Highways Backroads playlist on Spotify, updated monthly by yours truly. And we'll see you next time. I'm Will Payne Harrison.